Welcome back to Outer Wilds. We're going to be talking about puzzle design and mechanics and experience, and that means that you're going to want to stop watching if you haven't played. This is going to spoil the game, and it's a very good game, so go play it instead. In this game, all of the sequences, all of the puzzles, everything that can happen, all of these things are bound up to the physical mechanics of the game. Mechanics that you might control, or mechanics that might be local or even global that you don't control. Every puzzle comes out of these, and most of the story mechanics do as well. An easy example is here on Giant's Reach, or Giant's Deep, where we can just kind of fly around, and the first thing you're going to do when you reach this world is kind of scout around like this and say, oh look, okay, an island just got thrown into space, and you can kind of discover what's going on here. And the basic concept is that there are hurricanes on this world, and they'll throw things into space. That includes you, if you happen to decide to run into one of them. And that's a pretty simple mechanic, right? It's a water world where you can get flung into space. Now this obviously leads to a lot of mechanics, like if you find an island, say this island over here, maybe you land on it and start exploring and trying to figure out exactly what's up with the island, and you notice things like, oh look, there's crystals on these walls, so you can walk on the walls here and kind of see the path that you're planning on taking. But later on you might discover that inside, down there somewhere, you find a flooded cavern, and you can't actually see what's in that cavern as long as this is on the surface of the planet, filled with water. But, of course, if one of these hurricanes throws it up into space, hey, now you can see what's in there as long as you're here on the island when it gets thrown into space. These kinds of simple mechanical setups are a lot of fun. They allow you to explore basic kind of challenges and puzzles that you might be able to see with this kind of setup. But of course, not everything stops when you think it should. Just as you think you've discovered the idea behind the planet, you realize that you really haven't even started. This planet isn't about just the hurricanes that throw things up into space, because these hurricanes can do a lot of other things. This huge one here, what does it do? Well, it doesn't really throw you up into space, but it's big, so maybe you can go inside. And sure enough, there's something in here. This tower has a tremendous number of important tutorials in it, or tremendously important tutorial in it, and some players might not ever find it just because they never thought to look around inside of one of these hurricanes. After they tried one of the ones that flung them into space, they might have settled and decided that that was all there was to this planet. Even that isn't really the end of the hurricane setup, because not all of the hurricanes go the same direction. You can see most of these hurricanes... Ooh, almost got hit by that island. Most of these hurricanes spin clockwise, but one of them spins counterclockwise. What does that mean? Well, it'll fling you down into the mantle. You can't reach here just by driving. You can only reach here through the hurricane. Now, you probably won't notice that on your own. Maybe you will, but most players won't. As they play through the game and they go to other locations, they'll find hints about what to do here. Like, oh, you know, one of the hurricanes spins the wrong way. And maybe further down the chain, it'll be, oh, you know what, I got sucked into that hurricane that spins the wrong way. Or I used it to do some kind of science experiment or something. So if you haven't done this puzzle yet, you'll get steady clues trickling in, teaching you how. But those clues aren't here. They're in other parts of the universe. This is a very powerful way to set up this kind of routine, this kind of puzzle setup. These are puzzles that you don't need objects for. You don't need to try and figure out where to find a doodad. All you need to do is know how to do something, and that how is based almost entirely within the mechanics of the situation. For example, we want to go down there. How do we get down there? Well, we can already see that the only thing that goes through this mantle area are these jellyfish, so obviously it's got something to do with the jellyfish. But if we can't figure it out, then it turns out there are other places where we can learn more about the jellyfish, and it'll be explained in greater and greater detail until someone just outright says, have you tried getting in one of the friggin' jellyfish? Now, if we've already tried that, then we'll be like, yeah, that was awesome, we did that, remember? And if we haven't, we'll be like, oh, and we'll go do it. The joy of basing all of your puzzles around these kinds of mechanics is that the player can do them in any order. There's no outside restriction. There's no specific pattern that they need to visit these planets in. You know, it's not A, B, C, D, E. They can go in any order they want because all of the things on the world are based on mechanics that the player always has access to, whether they're on the world itself, such as the hurricanes, or whether they're things like piloting and being able to get out of our ship and being able to fire off probes. All of these things are common mechanics, and we have the ability to use them anywhere, in any order we want. And that means that we can do these planets in any order we want. It looks like a lighting glitch to me. This also means that we can set up every single one of these worlds with some sort of mechanic that we want to explore, and we can explore it in great detail. And we don't have to worry too much about the player not really understanding how to do things, because we can drop hints in other worlds. They're going to figure out one of these worlds, at least to some extent, and in doing so they will find clues to how to deal with these other worlds. Here's Brittle Hollow. Brittle Hollow has two local mechanics that are a big deal. One of those mechanics is that the world is disintegrating, and the other mechanic is that there is a black hole in the middle, and the black hole actually leads to a little space station outside of the solar system. Not very far outside, just a little bit outside. This setup means that as you're wandering through Brittle Hollow, you have a timing. There's some timing to deal with here. Like, if you arrive early, the planet's surface is intact, and you can see whatever's on the surface. The later you arrive, the more of the surface has fallen into the center and vanished. Not necessarily bad. There are things that you might not be able to reach if the surface is intact. More than that, though, even if you reach it late, the surface isn't gone. What it's done is it's moved through to this black hole area. And that means that you can go through and see that same set of surfaces on the other side of the black hole in deep space. I'll show you what I mean. Having a hard time piloting today for some reason. Not sure what's going on with my my instincts or whatever. Let's just decelerate nice and slow until I come to a relative rest. For example, that little thing there, that's intact right now, but we might not be able to get in. Maybe we have to wait until it falls through into that black hole. Because if we look, you know, there might be a place on the outside of this little cluster. Yeah, see, right here, we can get in here. But we can't reach that right now. I mean, it's not something we can cram our ship into. However, we could certainly reach it if it was floating in deep space, because we can just get out of our ship and float over there. So maybe we have to wait until this entire chunk falls through the black hole. Maybe. There are also some things out here, like this way station. We can explore this whenever we want, right? Or maybe we can't. Does it get hit by some debris that comes out of the black hole at some point? Does that break it, or does it crack it open? There's so many things you can do with this sort of mechanical situation. You can even get really nuanced, like you have to actually go down onto this part of the planet while it's on the planet side, But then you have to allow it to drop through the black hole with you on board in order to get that weightlessness that you're going to need. Of course, once you've dropped through this black hole, you're out in the middle of nowhere and you don't have your ship with you if you went on foot, which means that now you're out here in the depths of space with no extra air, no extra fuel. You've got to figure out what you're going to do and how you're going to do it within those constraints. It's another mechanic. Everything is a mix of mechanics. It's walking, it's falling through black holes, it's running out of air. All of these mechanics are everywhere. And you use them constantly in new and interesting patterns all the time. It works really, really well. I can just go through all of them. Ash Twin here. The sand goes from one of these planets to the other, and obviously when you're first getting started, you're going to think about things in terms of, I want to get there early, or I want to get there late, so that you can visit the planets when they are or aren't covered in sand. But that's just the start. Just when you think you've figured out how that mechanic works, it becomes clear that there are other layers. Like, there are places you can't get, you can't reach unless the planet is in just exactly the right time. Like, there's just enough sand for you to get across a cactus without getting poked, or just enough sand for you to make a jump that you wouldn't be able to make as the sand drains away. These techniques allow for a layered set of puzzles. The player will be able to get those easy early puzzles and feel like they're really making a tremendous amount of progress. And then they'll discover that there are more puzzles. There are so many other things they can do. They just have to figure out what combination of mechanics allows them to actually do the puzzle. And it's never something cheesy. It's never, pick up widget A and put it in widget B. There are those kinds of things, but they're not considered puzzles. They're just ways to get more information. The puzzles are always based on the mechanics of the situation. Mechanics the player controls, or mechanics the player doesn't control, but can understand how to utilize. This is true of all of the mechanics, including this scout, for example. Now, as you're running through the game, you might be confused as to why you would ever need the scout. Eventually, you start to discover the scout can take pictures of things you can't see, like deadly, glowing crystal stuff, energy fields. And at some point, you're going to discover something that requires you to scout ahead without going to that location. There's something called the interloper, which doesn't appear to be super obvious at the moment. It's around here somewhere. Maybe it's over there. And there's also something called Dark Bramble. Both of those places are there's Dark Bramble at the very least. Both of those places are really critical in the use of the scout. The scout can tell you what's ahead, and you really need to know what's ahead, because otherwise you will walk into something fatal and die. And you might be thinking, okay, well now I understand what the scout's for. It's for looking ahead. It's even got this thing where I can look ahead in different ways by, pressing left, right, and all that jazz. And then you realize that that's not really what it's for. The scout is for far more than that. You see, the scout can take a picture of something, and there's a mechanic involving things that are looked at. If you haven't played the game through all the way, you might not know what this is. This is a moon. If you might have been looking ahead, you may have realized that we didn't actually see a moon here before. There was no moon around this planet when we went here the first time. That's because this moon is the wandering moon, and it goes where it pleases. But as long as you're looking at it, it stays in your view. And there's actually a tutorial on how to think about this sort of thing, because this isn't the only time that they use this mechanic. But here's the thing, if you try and land on the wandering moon, you won't be able to see it. There's a moment when you have to look away in order to land on it, and it will vanish. Unless you're looking at it. So how do you look at it when you can't look at it? Well, take a look at the upper right-hand corner of my screen. I got a beautiful little photo of it. As long as that photo's there, and I'm looking at the photo, I'm looking at the moon. These are the kinds of mechanics that allow for these puzzles. Every time you think you've uncovered the extent of a mechanic, you realize that it mixes with another mechanic, or it does something that was wholly unexpected. It just keeps unfolding and unfolding and unfolding, and that is what makes this game's puzzles so incredibly compelling. Every time you visit a world, even your home world, Timber Hearth, every time you visit it, every time you look around it, you realize that you didn't go as deep as you thought. There's more than you thought. Timber Hearth has an entire underground network of water areas, geysers. And you can go down there and you can start to look around and you can get information on what the locals thought about the various what the ancients thought about Timber Hearth and why they were there and what they did, and it ends up connecting across the galaxy to other things that that exist in other places. They went to Timber Hearth for the same reason as the person who made the shuttle you're in. The shuttle you're in is re-entry grade aluminum, and that's why they were here. They came to Timber Hearth to harvest it so that they could create high temperature mechanisms. Where are those high temperature mechanisms? Well, you can find leads in Timber Hearth. Or you can find them on your own. And then when you do visit Timber Hearth, you'll be like, oh, I went here, that was so much fun. This is the way that the game works. Everything is connected to core mechanics, and the puzzles aren't disconnected from each other. Every puzzle points to the solution to another puzzle somewhere. And that allows these puzzles to be in disparate places, doing completely unrelated things, but still connected via all of the text, all of the things that happen. And it allows this game to unfold in any order the player wants. The player could pop right off to Bramble Hollow, or whatever it's called, to the Bramble, right from the start. Or they could futz around here on Timber Hearth and collect leads on where other places might be. Or they could take out their sensor scope and try and track people down by looking around the cosmos and seeing where people might be. Well, there's someone over there. Maybe we should go rescue them. Or at least talk to them. These approaches allow these puzzles to work together even while they are completely disconnected. There's nothing about Puzzle A and Puzzle B that is connected. You don't have to solve Puzzle A before you can do Puzzle B or anything like that. But if you do Puzzle B, it'll tell you a little bit about Puzzle A. And maybe that'll be enough to help you solve it. Or maybe it'll be enough to make you remember the good times you had trying to solve it. It's also worth mentioning that all of these mechanics and puzzles, they tend to kind of reflect on the themes of the game. And of course, the theme of the game is rediscovery, is of coming to peace with the idea of loops and of recurring situations and of the past and the future and the echoes that causes, which sounds highfalutin, but they've got, 20 hours or so to teach you about it, so they're not in any hurry. This sort of thematic setup allows them to do a lot with the actual text of their puzzles. Like, when you go to a puzzle and you solve a puzzle, you will usually be solving a Nomai puzzle, and there will be some Nomai people talking. You'll be able to read what they said. Or you'll be able to see pictures, or you'll be able to talk to a Hearthian that got stranded or whatever, right? These situations all intertwine not only across the cosmos to show you different, different puzzle solutions and so on, but they also work thematically because you are going through loops. The sun keeps exploding and making you start over, and that's exactly what happened to the Nomai, and it's also exactly what you're doing while you're discovering the Nomai. Just in general, it's extremely well thought out, and everything links back to itself. I find it to be one of the best setups, one of the best ideas that we've seen in an adventure game. And I think it's something that anybody can do. Anybody can create this kind of interlocking set of themes and mechanics and puzzles using these same ideas. But since it's been a couple of years and I haven't seen anybody do it, I thought I'd make a video about it. Shall we look at a theme? Let's look at a theme. The end of all things, the sun exploding. And just when you think that you understand it, just when you think you understand what it means for the sun to explode, the game tells you that you don't. And it unfolds again. And it keeps unfolding. That's the secret of this game. That's the secret of this design. And it's how you should seriously consider making your own puzzles, your own experiences in your own adventure game.